Hey everybody, my name is Mads Tolling and I play the violin. So today I'm going to teach you some cool techniques for playing arpeggios on a violin. And you may be asking, first of all, what is an arpeggio? Well, let me tell you about that. So arpeggios have been around since the dawn of time, basically, whenever somebody started playing an instrument. An arpeggio, instead of playing a chord this way, where you're basically strumming or you're playing the notes at the same time creating a chord like that, you could play that chord. And that becomes an arpeggio because you're playing the notes separately and kind of going up and down. And if you played like that on a violin, it would be something like this. That's an arpeggio because I'm playing that C scale, or rather that C arpeggio, going from the lowest note on the violin to one of the highest notes on the violin, all separated up. What I want to teach you today is a few different places in history where you actually had arpeggios happen in various pieces, kind of played with a different technique, right? Again, this chopped up chord. So let me go over that. And the first example is actually by Antonio Vivaldi from his Four Seasons in the Spring movement, where the thunder starts. And it's like that. And then it goes. So those are actually arpeggios. They're a separate note, goes by very quickly. It's sort of like a in the string, martelé, fast movement back and forth, basically creating these chords, right? And the first chord is, for example, an E chord. It goes on to an F sharp chord and so forth. So he's creating these chords as part of the arpeggio technique to make a really interesting sound there, interesting technique. So moving on from there, going to move on up a few centuries actually to the Beatles who wrote the song Blackbird. And for that one, you would play it typically on a guitar. Play it like that, right? Where you're sort of strumming the chords and also arpeggiating the chords. Or you could play it on a violin like this. Okay, so let me break down what I did there. I'm basically, instead of now playing all separate bows and separate notes, I'm slurring these notes together by playing 3 notes at a time. And I'm simply holding, this can only be done by placing the fingers down the string and not lifting them up a whole lot. So you want to find where those positions are, and then you want to move on from there. So it'd be a lot like I imagine a guitar player would do that by playing certain chords, finding those positions, but simply with the bow. Now you're just going back and forth. Remember to move that shoulder, move the arm. And it creates this very nice kind of bed of sound, a bed of notes that would support the melody on top, for example. So I've made an arrangement, for example, of Blackbird where I play the melody on top under that sort of bed of arpeggiated notes. So that's one of my favorite techniques for sure to use. And the last and the third technique where arpeggios is used it comes from bluegrass music. And this one is called Orange Blossom Special. First of all, when you play a lot of bluegrass or folk music on a violin, you're going to be very quickly familiar with this technique called shuffle bow. And the key thing with shuffle bow is you keep the bow really moving back and forth. So the bow keeps moving on the eighth notes, and then I accent certain parts of the beat, and that creates the groove, if you will. But you can do that using arpeggios as well. So in Orange Blossom Special, it goes like this. So that's kind of how it goes. And for that, these are all arpeggios. You think about it. That's an A chord, right? And that's a sort of an A augmented chord. And then it goes on to a D chord there. So it's just a different way of playing arpeggios by simply, again, you keep moving the bow back and forth, and then you're accenting naturally the top note, right? So the ba 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 ba, those sort of accents pop out of the music naturally because the top notes are louder than the bottom notes. And that creates yet another very different type of arpeggio than the other two examples for sure, because you're using the accents and you're using that sort of shuffle bow pattern to really drive the rhythm. So let me just finish that. And that concludes it for these arpeggio techniques for today. Comment below if you're interested in knowing other techniques, and please feel free to subscribe to this channel for a lot more of this material coming out. So thank you so much for watching.